In this week's installment of Anatomy of a Training Session, we did.
All right, so we did mixed map sets, incremental. We'll explain that in a second. We went every 3 minutes and 30 seconds at that incremental pacing, 20 and 16 calories on the assault bike, 12 and 10 push-ups, and 6 and 4 pull-ups. We did that for 8 to 12 sets, and we'll explain why we have such a wide variety of set options there.
Yeah, so guys, stay tuned for how many sets we got through, and please make sure you like and subscribe. So let's dissect all of the characteristics of this training session. Let's start with intention.
Yeah, so in intention, it's in the naming. So this is an incremental approach. So incremental just means that we get faster. So either it's a straight set where it's like, you know, you're doing something for 10 minutes and every 2:30, I want you to increase your pace. Or like we did today, it was a number of sets and then we broke, and then the next set, we wanted to be faster than the previous set.
Let's break down the structure of this workout. So incremental pacing, where did that come from?
Yeah, so in literature, incremental pacing comes from step testing methods. So just imagine, you know, we jump on this assault bike and we're like, okay, we want to hold 300 watts and we want to do that for 3 minutes, and then we want to break for 1 minute, and then we want to hold 350 for 3. And essentially it's a test, and it's like you stop when you're unable to hold that, but you're measuring things like heart rate, breath rate, oxygen uptake, all of those things throughout. So it originally comes from step testing.
What are the benefits of an incremental approach?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is that it allows a really good and safe environment for someone to test and understand their gears, and it allows for that environment in a way where you can actually learn. So it's like, you know, if our goal was to incrementally increase, it's like maybe I'm not able to do that. So it allows for a really good environment to test those gears.
I'd add on that it's an opportunity, a great opportunity for auto-regulation, and for someone to go into a training session and based on how they feel on that day, determine what the appropriate intensity is going to be for them.
Yeah, and then on the intensity piece, it also allows for, I guess, another safer environment to add intensity to your training session without compounding it on top of each other. And what I mean by that, if we take this incremental approach, it happens slowly, and you know it. And you know, I kind of started on my whiteboard today. I was like, this is where I started to really feel it. So after that, I think it was like set 6 for me, it was like that's where intensity started to occur. But if I would have went set 1 through 5 with that same amount of intensity, it would have just been too much compounded on top of each other for me. So it's a great way to control intensity in energy systems training.
And when thinking about energy systems training versus resistance training, there's some really nice carryover from this incremental style to the resistance training model, where if someone is working up to a set of, you know, heavy 3 on their back squat over an EMOM or over a series of sets, they're not starting at their heaviest load in resistance. There's going to be that ramping up, that building up, and you can see some really cool things happen in resistance where through that opportunity to build, someone maybe hits a new 3RM. Same thing in here, we're giving people opportunity to ramp up into that final intense set.
Yeah, and that's probably where you guys see that magic happening in like those EMOM formats with like a novice or intermediate client, where it's like, hey, I want you to go a jerk from the block, and I want you to do that every minute until you fail, but I want you to add 5 or 10 pounds every set. And a lot of the time with those avatars, they hit personal records. So that's kind of where that concept came from, and that's what's happening physiologically. I think another piece I'd want to hit on is the benefit to be able to test things. I guess let's call them physiological markers in this format, because there's intentional stopping, right? So like imagine if we had like Pinoes on, or imagine if we had Moxie units, and after every set, we didn't just say, hey, Carl, hey, Georgia, how did that feel? It's like, how did it feel? And then I'm gonna take some blood from you and I wanna measure your lactate levels. Or we have this Apple Watch on. I wanna see what that trend in your heart rate is. I wanna understand with that mask what your oxygen uptake is. Maybe we did like a BP measurement after every set and we start to see some changes there. So it's a really good opportunity to test those physiological markers as well.
Yeah, and then finally, I just add as a last benefit, and we will drop a study below for you guys to read on this, but when we look at the efficiency in increase in blood flow in steady state versus in incremental settings tend to be more effective.
Yeah, and as well as in high intensity interval training. So HIIT, so they even measured what blood flow is when you go intense out of the right from the get-go versus this incremental method where it's like, we're gonna start here, we're gonna ramp up over time. So overall blood flow is actually increased in this method as well.
Let's lay out the experience of this workout, Carl, and it's definitely one we can speak to personally. But first, let's start with what a client or a coach might experience going into this themselves.
Yeah, so in exercise selection inside of this piece, you'll notice that it's extremely simple, right? But what you will notice is it's not just a cyclical modality or a cyclical piece where we're just saying, okay, assault bike for this amount of time, break, assault bike. We have different types of contractions. In this piece specifically, it's upper body gymnastics. So just kind of think about tension, right? Overall tension in this workout. We have a lot of tension happening through the quadriceps when we're doing the 20 calories on the assault bike or the 16 calories on the assault bike. And then we jump off of there, and now we're creating a lot of tension in the chest and the shoulders and in the anterior delts and all that, and the volume of push-ups, and then we're jumping up on a pull-up bar and we're creating tension on the other side of the upper body, right, in the back. So what it challenges is it challenges blood flow to all of your extremities, right? So the legs in the assault bike and in the upper body. It just adds a level of complexity and challenge and recovering between these sets, especially when it's in the back of your head, I have to get faster.
And at the same time, the challenge of breathing is going on that assault bike, right? That's a consistent throughout the entire, all 8 to 12 sets. But in those 8 to 12 sets, pace is getting higher each set, so breathing is getting a little harder, a little bit harder, and at the same time, rest stays the same, right? Obviously, as work drops, there is a slightly longer period that you do get to rest, but we're stuck with that 3:30 as that cap before you have to get on the bike and do it again. So breathing is the second big challenge you'd expect to experience.
Yeah, and understanding pacing strategies specifically for this one, because if we were to lay this out in work, I think most people would look at it and they would say, okay, I need to just keep doing the work and the gymnastics movements, and you kind of tried to do that, right? We'll talk about it in a second, but you have to just try to keep this steady cadence in the gymnastics movements because you're not doing pull-ups that much faster than last set, obviously, or even push-ups. So the challenge is increasing your pace on the assault bike. And there's a lot that sits inside of there, especially when mentally you know and you understand that, hey, the hardest part of this piece, if it is that increasing in pace set to set, I have to do that first before I do anything else. So jumping off of the assault bike after the 20 or 16 calories at plus 10 RPM that you were at, 8 to 10 sets ago, that's tough, right? So jumping off of that and getting right into the push-up and right into the pull-up, you have to kind of organize that in your brain and continue to increase that pace on the assault bike because you're probably not going to do it on the other two pieces.
Yeah, it's also an awesome opportunity to really learn and test your understanding of your gears. And by gears, what I mean is the pace that you're able to go for that period of work with the rest that you have, recover from it and be able to do it again at a faster pace. So you have to have a fairly robust understanding of your gears in aerobic work to get on that assault bike in set number 1. Understand I'm holding 52 RPM in set number 1. 8 sets in, I want to be holding 60 RPM. Am I able to do that? And what is the increase going to look like from set to set? That is an incredible amount of detail and experience that is tested there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this goes along with that, but you have to be patient. You have to be, right? Like if you come out and you look at the amount of volume that you have, so if you kind of just do the math, like let's say we're doing at least 200 calories on the assault bike. If you're like, okay, I want to get 10 sets and you're going 20, and then for you it's 160. You have to have a lot of patience because especially excitement and cortisol, and we're like, okay, music's on, and you're like, okay, I have to actually start this first set a lot slower than where I'm going to be 5 sets from now. So if you don't have that patience, you're going to regret it, or you're just not going to be successful in actually implementing the idea of this piece and getting faster every set. So you just have to have a great amount of patience right off the bat.
What was your number 1 reflection from your training session?
Yeah, I think I approached it well. I think it's because I had that patience. I started at like 63 RPM, and then my last set was like 75 or 76 RPM. It felt easy, but I had to be okay with that. Like easy. Like I was breathing a little bit, I was kind of messing around and talking and stuff like that. Then I got to that set 6 and I was like, oh my gosh, this just got real. So having patience in those first few sets saved me at the end, because it gave me something in the tank to be able to actually get faster on 10, 11, and 12, which was the most challenging for me.
Yeah, the number one reflection I had was that when breathing gets really tough, those upper body push and pull contractions become almost impossible. So my last set, which was set number 11, I felt okay. Breathing was hard, but I felt like I could do it, and I went to do those push-ups and I had nothing.
It's blood flow, right? It's like your body wasn't able to shuttle blood from the extremities to the heart and back in enough time, so you just weren't recovering at the end there.
So finally, Paul, for the viewer at home, who is this for? Can they do it? Can you guys do it? I don't know.
Putting me on the spot. Yeah, I think the number one we have to look at is your experience in aerobic training. Everything that we just talked about is absolutely moot if you don't have any experience in aerobic training. Like you hit on auto-regulation, we hit on like having patience and knowing your gears. The only way to learn and understand those things is just having a fairly robust amount of experience in actually breathing, understanding what's hard, what's easy, and all of that. So yeah, just experience in aerobic training would be my number one.
And exercise selection, obviously we did the assault bike and the push and pull with gymnastics. You can get as varied as you want to in exercise selection for incremental pacing. So there could be any kind of modalities and exercises in there, but it has to be what the individual is capable of. So if you're deciding to do a session like this, you have to ask yourself, can I actually make these contractions aerobic? Can I put them in a sustainable setting? Because I'm now gonna put them not only in a sustainable setting, but one that's gonna get increasingly intense across a prescribed number of sets. So just consider what you or your client is capable of.
And then I'll just end it on this. I think this is one where we don't want to try to find scales for. Like if you can't do the push-up and the pull-up, just do incremental sets on the assault bike and that's it. And then work on that pushing and pulling strength and muscle endurance and all of that in your resistance training.
As always, guys, please make sure you like and subscribe and join us for the next episode of Anatomy of a Training Session.